I cordially invite Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Dr. Sarath Tamunugama, Mr. Gomin Dayasiri, Mr. Mohan Piris, Dr. Ranjit Bandara, Professor Shanta Hennayaka, and Brigadier Lal Gunasekara to the stage. Now, Brigadier Lal Gunasekara, Deputy Vice Chancellor of General Sir John Kotalawala Defence University, will introduce the chairperson of this session.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the chairperson of the second plenary session of KDU Symposium 2011. The theme of this session is Humanities and Social Sciences, and Honorable Senior Minister of International Monetary Cooperation, Dr. Sarath Tamunugama, is going to chair the session. Dr. Amunugama was born in 1939 and studied at Trinity College, Kandy. He graduated from the University of Ceylon, obtaining an honours degree in sociology. He possesses a master's degree in social sciences and a doctoral degree in ethnology. He is a visiting fellow of Harvard University in the United States since 1991. Dr. Amunugama joined the prestigious Ceylon Civil Service, which is later renamed as Sri Lanka Administrative Service, in 1962. During his career, he served as the government agent of the Kandy district, Director of Information, Secretary to the Minister of State, and Chairman of the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Before entering into active politics, he worked as the Director of International Program for the Development of Communication at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris. Dr. Amunugama entered the Parliament in 1994 and held many ministerial portfolios during his political career. He was the Minister of Irrigation and Water Management, Finance and Planning, Public Administration and Home Affairs, and Minister of Education and Higher Education, to name a few. Now he serves as the Senior Minister of International Monetary Cooperation. Sir, I cordially invite Honorable Minister Dr. Sarath Amunugama to chair this session. Sir, over to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to start plenary session 2 in this annual symposium entitled Challenges of Post-Conflict Sri Lanka. This morning you had a in-depth analysis from the point of view of defense. And today, this afternoon session is entitled The Humanities and Social Sciences. But if we break it down to more specific terms, I see two aspects. One is the constitutional aspect of post-conflict resolution, and the other aspect is, from the point of view of the social sciences, ways and means of integration and attitudinal change. So our presenters also are, in a sense, divided into these two elements. One is the constitutional aspect, and other is the social integration aspect from the point of view of political science, social science, anthropology, and so on. I just want to make a few observations in the 10 minutes allotted to me. The first is that this seminar or symposium is being held after the war has been won. So we are now very much in the post-conflict stage. Many of the discussions, many of the meetings, more than 2 years ago, I think there were thousands of such meetings, were all conducted in the heat of the war. But now we are thinking of looking forward to both the constitutional and social science approaches to the new post-conflict situation. If you look at the constitutional aspect, basically in terms of the 13th Amendment, which will be analyzed by our presenters today, there was a certain element of, shall I say, inequality when that amendment was passed, because the 13th Amendment was a consequence of the Indo-Lanka Agreement, which was entered into at a time when the internal conflict in Sri Lanka had spilled over and created tension between Sri Lanka and India. So in a sense, the structure of the 13th Amendment, I think it will be analyzed by Gomin and Mohan, bore the imprint of the circumstances in which this agreement was made. And that is how a large part of it was really, if I may say so, a carbon copy of the Indian Constitution, because the President at that time, Mr. Jayajawardena, felt that tactically, if you adopt virtually the wording of the Indian Constitution and its structure, that would save him a lot of explanation and debate and so on. So one was that aspect. Then what is very important now is that many of the, or some of the crucial elements of the 13th Amendment have now been found to be not practical. And what is now on the ground was not what was envisaged at that time. I refer particularly to a very key component of that 13th Amendment, which was the temporary joinder of the North and East. I recall that this was more or less a concession to the views of particularly the TNA and other Tamil organizations, which had a sort of shadow of the idea of a homeland. So this language was found to accommodate that from the Tamil side. But subsequent events have clearly shown that the joinder, which was of course a temporary joinder, which over a period of time virtually became which was not effected, has now been resolved by the actual military encounter. The 13th Amendment envisaged a plebiscite or a referendum, which was never enforced, which I think was very good, because if we had gone into the referendum situation, it would have created even more tensions and probably would have prevented the type of accommodation that is now taking place in the eastern province. So I think one of the great successes in the military engagement is the freeing, firstly, of the eastern province, and by common consent. And this is not only the state, but the players in the eastern province themselves have clearly stated that a joinder is not feasible, that the north will remain as one province, and the East will be another province, and you will have provincial councils in each of those. I remember interminable debates, discussions, compromises, various constitutional and structural formulations to bring the two together or have some tenuous relationship. That now time has clearly shown that that is something of the past. We have to accept the situation, and maybe in time the constitution has to recognize that. So one is the end of the war. Secondly is the virtual de facto end of the idea of a joinder. And thirdly, of course, now with the setting up of the provincial councils, they are a reality now. The question of what are the powers that should be devolved. There is a debate on that. But I think on the two issues of police and land, if we look at the experiences even of India, which was the sort of prototype of this, there has been a lot of rethinking. For example, have the police powers been used in a reasonable way even in the Indian states? There's a lot of debate on that. Are you conferring too much of power on the chief minister and so on? So these two issues, I think, will be dealt with in much greater detail by our presenters. I only want to say that we have a very, very distinguished panel. I'm very honored to be the chairman of this. And we have on one side my good friend, Mr. Gomin Dayasiri, who is what I would like to call a public intellectual now. He gives his views openly, but in a very dispassionate and I would say liberal manner. He's quite willing to meet arguments, refute arguments, enter into discussion. I look on him as a very distinguished and exemplary public intellectual. Then we also have Mr. Mohan Piris, who's probably the best person we have in this country now to talk about the nitty-gritty of these constitutional reforms. So both of them will really deal with the constitutional aspects. In a sense, it is fitting that we have this debate here in Sir John Kotalawala Defence University, because in these grounds, probably many of the early constitutional changes, discussions may have taken place. So I hope this also will be a historic discussion. Then we also have from the social science side, basically from the economic side, a presentation by Dr. Ranjit Bandara, who is an eminent economist, and we have also from the point of view of what is called national level social integration, a presentation by Professor Shanta Hennanayaka of University of Peradeniya. So we have a very distinguished panel.